So Dr. Nasrallah, I understand, as you said, that even during fetal development, there are changes in the brain that can cause schizophrenia. And yet, we often do not see the onset of the psychosis until the patient is perhaps 20, 25 years old.
Right. Earlier in males, a little later in females.
Okay. So during this 20, perhaps 30-year period of time, are there any manifestations of schizophrenia that can be seen?
Absolutely. Schizophrenia is not just psychosis that emerges at age 20. That's when they develop psychosis.
Okay.
But even from the first day of life, believe it or not, research has shown that newborn babies who later become schizophrenic already show differences in their brain and in their neurological condition.
Wow.
Yeah, Dr. Barbara Fish did some pioneering studies back at UCLA in the 50s, where she studied the children born in state hospitals back then, you know, the state hospitals,
Yes.
our patients were there most of the time. And some women, you know, had sex on the campus and they would have babies. She decided to study the children born to mothers with schizophrenia and studied them carefully. She did for a long time and went back to her records and found out that those who later developed schizophrenia were already different on the first day of life. Now you say, how can they be different? Well, she found out that they were awake an extra hour almost in the first day of life.
That's significant.
Yes, because the average newborn sleeps 23 hours a day. They just wake up 3-4 times and drink some milk and go back to sleep.
Yes.
But those who developed schizophrenia were awake. They're kind of open-eyed and watchful. What does that tell you? Their CNS, their brain, is hypervigilant.
Wow.
It's on guard. It's paranoid, if you want to call it that.
Very interesting.
Of course, babies don't talk, or they would accuse you that you stole their milk or something. but they know that's a nonverbal physiological change that she noted already on the first day of life. But then she followed them up and found that their milestones were very erratic. They would achieve a milestone like lifting the head, you know, smiling, reaching out, and then they would lose it. Very, very unusual instead of progressing. So their neurological development was abnormal because it's a brain development. That's all.
Yes, of course.
And then they walked later, about 2 to 3 months later than the healthy children who did not develop schizophrenia. In preschool and kindergarten, research showed that the young kids who later become schizophrenic tend to be isolated. They did not like to mix with a lot of people. They didn't like being in groups. They have social anxiety.
I was a little like that when I was a kid. I always had a little trouble making friends, but it wasn't enough to really stand out. And I blended
it didn't stick out. I mean, kids differ, but these kids preferred like to talk only to the teacher or to one friend, but they didn't like to be in a group. It kind of made them very anxious. Then we come to the prodrome, you know, and adolescence. That's when changes start taking place. And parents don't even know that this is a precursor to something serious. They think it's just adolescence, you know.
Yes.
Because they get more withdrawn, and they develop OCD symptoms. They develop some depression symptoms. Some of them develop some hyperactivity, ADHD symptoms. A mishmash of like symptoms here and there, different than before. And their grades in school go down like crazy. When your grades drop to C for an A student, that's a flag, right? Why is this very smart student suddenly getting C's? That's what we see in the earliest phase of the prodrome, cognitive decline. For some reason, the brain stops working.
Yes.
And memory suffers, and you go to class and you don't absorb, you don't learn as much as you used to. And then within a couple of years, usually they convert into frank psychosis. And that's when they develop hallucinations and delusions.
Right.
And they get the label psychosis or schizophrenia.
So Dr. Nasrallah, you've mentioned the word prodrome in schizophrenia. What is the prodrome?
The word prodrome means what comes before, okay? So it's also referred to as the at-risk state. That's when people at high risk, either genetically or environmentally, start changing their behavior, their thinking, their emotions. They start changing about 1 to 2 years before they become full-fledged delusional and hallucinatory. So that became a very hot area of research in the last 15, 16 years with multiple groups around the world identifying those kids at risk because they have a family history,
Okay.
and they're changing, and their grades are decreasing, and in school they start failing in high school. And that research focused on how can we prevent the onset of psychosis.
Okay, interesting.
So that actually is a very interesting series of studies around the world that is generating a lot of new knowledge about what goes on during the prodrome that leads to psychosis.